I always go back to the book of Joshua. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for God will be with you wherever you go. Believing once again in America is the only way to defend ourselves from those who want to destroy us.
Nikki Haley.
Nikki Haley.
Nikki Haley, the former U.S. ambassador to the UN, of course, former South Carolina governor, and much, much more.
The nature of the North Korean regime is clear.
Hard to find a terrorist group in the Middle East that does not have Iran's fingerprints.
On the day when we open our brand new American embassy in Jerusalem.
Jobs are on the way to the state. Governor Nikki Haley announced Michelin is spending $200 million.
I'm going to introduce tax reform to show them how we can get it done. We are not okay with abortion up until the time of birth. 90% of American kids are still under critical race theory. We're pushing what a small minority want on the majority of Americans. It's too much.
My purpose is to save our country, see the same America I see, and stand for America together with me.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with all of you. I love you too. We know that when two or more are gathered in his name, God is with us. And so it is a great day for us all to be together. You know, I want to tell you a little bit about myself for those of you who don't know, and then I want to talk about where we are in the country. I was born and raised in a small rural town in South Carolina, 2 stoplights, 2,500 people. You couldn't think about doing something wrong without somebody already telling your mom. We were the only Indian family in that small southern town. We weren't white enough to be white. We weren't black enough to be black. They didn't know who we were, what we were, or why we were there. And I remember when I would get teased on the playground, my mom would always say, your job is not to show them how you're different. Your job is to show them how you're similar. It's amazing how the country could use my mom's advice today. And even though they didn't know why we were there, my parents knew why we were there. Because there was never a day they didn't remind me, my brothers, and my sister how blessed we were to live in America. My mom started a business out of the living room of our home. 30-plus years later, it was a successful company. I started doing the books for them when I was 13. It wasn't until I got to college that I realized that was child labor. I went on to Clemson. I graduated with a degree in accounting. I'm an accountant, not a lawyer. Accountants are problem solvers. And then I went on and worked in the corporate world. You know, when I became governor, we took on South Carolina when she was hurting. We had put all our jobs in textiles, and when textiles went overseas, so did the jobs. South Carolina had 11% unemployment. We had thousands of people on welfare, and we needed to get to work. So I quickly got to work. By the time I left, South Carolina was an economic powerhouse. We were building planes with Boeing. We were building more BMWs than any place in the world. We brought in Mercedes-Benz. We brought in Volvo. We had 5 international tire companies, and they were referring to us as the beast of the Southeast, which I love. We moved 35,000 people from welfare to work, and we put reforms in our prison systems that now have us with the lowest recidivism rate in the country in South Carolina. We were named the friendliest state in the country, the most patriotic state in the country, and the #2 state in the country people were moving to. And then I got the call to go to the United Nations. And my response was, I don't even know what the UN does. I just know everybody hates it. I was right. But when I got to the UN, I wanted countries to know what America was for and what America was against. I didn't care if they didn't like me, but I wanted them to respect America. So we got to work. We pulled ourselves out of the Iran deal. We acknowledged the truth. We acknowledged the truth and moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And we passed the largest set of sanctions against a country in a generation with North Korea. But the most important thing that we did, we took the kick me sign off of our backs, and America was respected again. Now I'm running for president, and I don't need to tell you how bad things are. You don't have to turn on the news to see it. We are $32 trillion in debt. We're having to borrow money just to make our interest payments. Now, I would love to say to you that Biden did that to us. But I have always spoken in hard truths, and I'm going to do that with you today. Our Republicans did that to us, too. You go back and you look at that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill that they passed with no accountability whatsoever. Expanded welfare that leaves us now with 90 million Americans on Medicaid, 42 million Americans on food stamps. And did Republicans try and make it right? No. They opened up earmarks for the first time in 10 years, pushing through 7,000 of them in December. And just recently, $10 billion Republicans pushed through, $9 billion Democrats pushed through. Want to know how they spent your money? $7.5 million on horse racing in Arizona, $30 million on an honors college in Vermont, $10 million to tear down a hotel in Alaska, $7.5 million on a courthouse in Colorado. All while 1 in 6 American families can't pay their utility bill. 60% of Americans are in credit card debt. Social Security will go bankrupt in 10 years. Medicare will go bankrupt in 8. Bless you. Then you look at the education system that we have. Everybody wants to blame COVID for education. No, we had problems with education before COVID. Pre-COVID, 67% of 8th graders in our country were not proficient in reading or math. Think about that. Recently, 2 weeks ago, 82% of 8th graders weren't proficient in history or civics. Now you put 2 years of lockdowns on them and our kids are in a world of hurt, yet you still have too many kids going through with critical race theory, which if a little girl goes into kindergarten, if she's white, you're telling her she's bad. If she's brown or black, you're telling her she'll never be good enough and she'll always be a victim. You've got biological boys playing in women's sports. This is one of the biggest issues of our time, and no one is doing anything about it. My daughter ran track in high school. I don't even know how I would have that conversation with her. How do we get our girls used to biological boys in their locker room? You can't. And then Johns Hopkins comes out with the definition of a woman. Did you see what it was? A non-man. You cannot erase women. We can't stop how far we have come. We have to fight for our girls and make sure that they know that we have their back. And yet they want to know why a third of our teenage girls last year seriously contemplated suicide. We need to be raising strong girls. Strong girls become strong women. Strong women become strong leaders. Then you look at the border, and let me tell you, I've been to the border, and I didn't pull a Kamala and go and come back. I went 400 miles down that border. You're not ready for what I saw. Mounds of clothes, mounds of shoes, paraphernalia, areas of rape centers that women and girls have to walk through. When ranchers get up in the morning, they get their coffee and they go see if anyone died trying to cross their fence. They pick up whatever little kids were left behind and turn them over to Border Patrol. I met with multiple sheriffs. They said before 7 a.m., they round up whatever illegal immigrants they can find, turn them over to Border Patrol. Border Patrol documents them and releases them until their court date years from now. And when you ask Border Patrol about their job, they said, you want to know what we do? We're glorified babysitters. They don't let us do our job. 5 million illegal immigrants. We had enough fentanyl cross the border that would kill every single American last year. #1 cause of death of adults 18 to 49, fentanyl. And don't think for a second China doesn't know exactly what they're doing when they send it over. Then you look at our national security situation. Did you ever think we'd look at the sky and see a Chinese spy balloon looking right back at us? It's a national embarrassment. You've got Russia on the march in Ukraine trying to take their freedom. You've got North Korea testing ballistic missiles. You've got Iran building a bomb. You've got China on the march. But make no mistake, none of this would have happened had we not had that debacle in Afghanistan. My husband is a combat veteran. He deployed to Afghanistan. The idea that he and his military brothers and sisters had to watch the U.S. leave Bagram Air Force Base in the middle of the night without telling our allies who stood shoulder to shoulder with us for decades because we asked them to be there. Think about what that told our friends. More importantly, think about what that told our enemies. We've got some serious work to do. So that's a lot of bad, right? It's hard to find anything good. But now I'm going to tell you what I told South Carolinians when I became governor. No more whining. No more complaining. Now we get to work. How do we fix it? When it comes to our economy, we claw back the $500 billion of unspent COVID dollars that are out there. Instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, we go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID fraud that we know exists. If 8% of our budget is interest, quit borrowing. Cut up the credit cards. You have to balance a budget every day. I had to balance a budget as governor of South Carolina. Why is Congress the only group that doesn't have to balance a budget? Let's change that. I will stop the spending, I will stop the borrowing, I will stop the earmarks, and I will veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels. When it comes to education in South Carolina, we knew if a child couldn't read by 3rd grade, they were 4 times less likely to graduate high school. So we started holding them back. We put them in reading remediation programs. We brought in their parents, and we set them up for success. We need to do that across this country to get our kids back on track. And no parent should ever have to wonder what is being said or taught to their child in the classroom. We need to always have parental rights in this country. We have one job, and no school bureaucrat can take that away from us. And we need to make sure that parents can decide which schools their kids go to. No child should be mandated by where they were born and raised. And then let's build things in America again. Let's put vocational classes back in the high schools. As governor of South Carolina, we had apprenticeships all over our state. Our kids were learning how to build what we were making. And then when it comes to our universities, we'll tell universities, you either take American money or Chinese money, but the days of taking both are over. We'll get that Chinese infiltration out of our universities. And you know, I want to talk to you about the issue of life. As governor, I fought for life and passed pain-capable legislation and multiple things we did to support mothers. At the UN, we did everything we could to stop abortions across our world. Now we're in a situation where we're having a big debate over life and abortion. But I think it's time that we look at this and deal with it the right way. I am unapologetically pro-life. I'm not pro-life because the Republican Party tells me to be. I'm pro-life because my husband was adopted. I had trouble having both of my children. I am surrounded by blessings. But we need to make sure that our country stops demonizing this issue and we humanize this issue. This is personal for everyone, every woman and every man in America. Let's go back to how this happened, because we have to start telling the American people the truth. Pre-1973, you had 46 state laws on abortion. And then all of a sudden, unelected justices came out in 1973, threw out those 46 state laws and said abortion anytime, anywhere, for any reason. Now a wrong has been made right. And we've taken it back away from the unelected justices, and we've put it back in the hands of the states. Now, some of the states have become more pro-life, and I welcome that. Some have become more on the abortion side. I wish that wasn't the case. But now there's the issue of, is there a place for a federal law? I think there is. But in order for us to have a federal law, let's be honest. It takes the majority of a House, it takes 60 Senate votes, and a signature of a president. We haven't had 60 Senate votes in over 100 years. We might have 45 pro-life senators. So let's start talking about how we can come together on what we can agree on. I think we can do federal legislation that the American people will agree. Let's stop late-term abortions. Let's focus on encouraging more adoptions and making sure that we have kids with more love and foster care than not. Let's protect religious liberty, and if there are doctors and nurses who don't believe in abortion, they shouldn't have to perform them. And let's make sure no state laws say that if a woman has an abortion, she's not going to go to jail and we're not going to give her the death penalty. Let's start there, because that's what I think we can get done. We have to humanize this situation. We have to respect the fact that everybody has a story, and we have one goal: to make sure we save as many babies as possible and protect as many mothers as possible. That's our goal. That's what I will do for you. Now, when it comes to the border, how do we fix the border? You know, when I was governor, I passed one of the toughest illegal immigration laws in the country. We did a mandatory E-Verify, and we said that every business had to prove whoever they hired were here in this country legally. We will do a national E-Verify program. We will defund sanctuary cities once and for all. Instead of 87,000 IRS agents, we'll put 25,000 Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. We will go back to remain in Mexico, because guess what? Nobody wants to remain in Mexico. And we will stop catch and release, and we will go to catch and deport. We will stop all of this lawlessness happening on the border. And when it comes to our national security, we will let countries know what we expect of them. No more being reactionary. You know, when I was at the UN, there were two things that our enemies never wanted us to have. They never wanted us to have a strong military, and they never wanted us to be energy independent. We will do both of those things. Strong militaries don't start wars. Strong militaries prevent wars. And with energy, we will do an all-of-the-above approach. No more going hat in hand to Saudi Arabia, and no more getting dirty oil from Iran and Venezuela. And then we will make sure that we're smart. You know, when we moved that embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and we were condemned by the entire world, I went to my office and I said, I want you to put a book together. I want you to list all 193 countries that belong to the UN. I want the second column to be the percentage of times they vote with the U.S. and against the U.S. And I want the third column to be how much foreign aid we give them. I took that book and I gave it to President Trump. He lost his mind. He's flipping pages. He's yelling out countries. And I said, look, I'm not saying you give foreign aid based on a percentage vote. But that should be one of the things we look at. Quit trying to buy friends. Quit trying to pay off enemies. They gave $50 billion in foreign aid last year. Do you know who they gave it to? Pakistan, that harbored terrorists that tried to kill our soldiers. Iraq, that has Iranian influence that says death to America. Zimbabwe, the most anti-American African country there is. Belarus, who's holding hands with Russia as they invade Ukraine. We give money to communist Cuba, who we named a state sponsor of terrorism and who now has a spy center on us with China. And the one that's the biggest kick in the gut, we give money to China. How weak do we look? When I am president, we will no longer give money to countries that hate America. So we have the answers. We know what we need to do. But the thing that bothers me the most is this national self-loathing that has taken over our country. The idea that they say America's bad or rotten or racist. I was elected the first female minority governor in history. America's not racist, we're blessed. Our kids need to know to love America. They need to be saying the Pledge of Allegiance when they start school every day. Do you remember when you were growing up? Do you remember how simple life was? Do you remember how safe you felt? It was about faith, family, and country. Your parents raised you to be a responsible individual. You went to school and you learned what you needed to be successful. You went to church and you found your faith and your conscience. Don't you want that again? Because we could have that again. But in order to do that, we have to have a new generational leader. We've got to leave the negativity and the drama and the chaos of the past. We have to make sure that we're looking forward and we're looking towards solutions. You know, 3 days ago, I dropped my husband off at 4 a.m. to go on another year-long deployment. And when I did, I watched him and 230 other soldiers hold 2 duffel bags to load a bus to go to a country they've never been. And they were all doing it in the name of protecting and defending America. They don't care about this political drama back and forth. They care about protecting our freedoms. They still believe in this country. We need to make sure that if they're willing to go fight to defend us, then when we're here in this country and we're looking at this next presidential, we need to fight to defend and protect them. We've got a country to save. But in order to save her, we're going to have a lot of courage. Courage for me to run, and courage for every one of you to know, don't complain about what you get in a general election if you don't play in this primary. It matters. Someone asked me why I was running. And I said, my parents came here 50 years ago to an America that was strong and proud and full of opportunities. I want them to know that country again. I'm doing this for my husband and his military brothers and sisters because they need to know their sacrifice means something. They need to know that we love our country. I'm doing this for my daughter who just got married, and I saw how hard it was for her and her husband to buy a home. And I'm doing this for my son who's going to be a senior in college, and I have watched him write papers of things he doesn't believe in just to get an A. That's not our country. That's not us. And recently, 78% of Americans have said they don't think their kids are going to have as good of a life as they did. We can't be okay with that. I'm not okay with that. We do have a country to save. But I'm telling you, if we have faith in God, if we remember that America has an amazing ability to self-correct, if we all commit today, and if you will join me, I promise you our best days are to come. God bless you. I appreciate you very much. God bless you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Well, she was at